Morning, everybody. So this is a little different kind of a meeting. We tried to do something with the PPC ongoing and monthly, and this is the only chance we'll have to really talk to one another before the November election, which is so close to all of us. And I'm hoping those of you who are on the PPC got your letters from Randy, appointing you, reappointing you. We're just anxious to keep this going. We've made some really good starts. The staff is absolutely terrific in coming up with initiatives and all sorts of things that we can do together. We're in the fight of our lives. We really are. We use the word fascism, I don't know, but I was watching the U.S. and the Holocaust the other night, and God, when you think about the lead up to that, where false news and denial of rights and all the things that lead up to some kind of a demagogue that we put up with for 4 years, and now the after effects of all that, and it's so dangerous. And if we look back just a month or so, and look at all the great legislation that this administration has passed, especially most recently the Inflation Reduction Act, amazing piece of legislation that was passed with a bare minimum of majorities in the Senate, only 50-50 with the Vice President to cast the prevailing vote. So imagine if we were to lose that and to lose the House, and what would happen. So we're going to go through state by state and the whole scene and the AFTerburners, and I assume my good buddy Nina is with us to talk about that. And so I'm just going to step back and listen, turn it over to you guys and Samantha, and see the overview. And when we come together, we'll do our best to be involved. Many of you are already involved, and the whole thing is organizing and reaching out and doing things like some of us are doing in Florida and all across the country. And the political legislative department has been helping many retirees who want to volunteer and go someplace and do something. And this is going to highlight the needs and where they are in the key states and what we have to do. So I'm very happy to sit back and watch and listen to all the good information, and I'll turn it back to you guys. And Samantha, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. I think our field director, deputy director in the political department, Sam Galing, is about to speak, and I just wanted to, before she gets going, just drop a little link into the chat for everyone. It's go.aft.org/volunteer. Thank you, Chris, our fantastic support person. This is the link with all of our volunteer opportunities that we ask that you share broadly and widely, and impossible to share it with too many people in your network. So Sam, I hand it over to you, and everybody, if you take one thing away today, please go away with that link and share it around.
Thank you, Calvin. I am probably going to go and stop my video just to make sure I've got a better connection for everybody. And if you can't hear me, please let me know. I'm happy to speak up. I'm kind of in between construction and travel. So, but I wanted to kind of lay out, and this is probably not a surprise for anybody, but wanted to give you a sense of what does it look like out there right now. So we look at primarily two different places. We look at the Cook Report and 578. And if you look at the Cook Report regarding the U.S. Senate, no shocker here, right? It's Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Nevada that are those toss-ups. We have seen Wisconsin go a little bit more to the left, which is exciting. But when I say that, that's like 2 points. It's not anything huge. We are still concerned about New Hampshire, and of course, we're worried about North Carolina. And we obviously have a pulse on Florida, right? We've got Carla running for lieutenant governor. We want to make sure we're supporting her there. But this is sort of what it generally looks like in the US Senate. So it's really going to ride on however it shakes out. It'll come down to about 5 to 3 states, whether or not we can win and increase seats in the US Senate. If you look at 538, which if you all want to get really into this sort of horse race, they do update mostly daily. I don't recommend it because it can be aggravating if you're like me and you want to look at this late at night. But it's not bad. It looks good, right? We have a good chance, like 61% chance that the Democrats can gain seats in the Senate. But again, this all rides on polls and fundraising, and it's not necessarily relative to what we're seeing actually on the ground. And everything is within a margin of error. As we look at the House, very similarly, you look at this toss-up column, and that is 19 Democratic currently held seats that are toss-ups, and only 8 in the Republican column that are toss-ups. It is going to be very, very tight in the House. This may or may not go our way. If you look at 538, they are saying, Republicans are still favored to win the House, but I will caveat that with how much, right? They might still win the House, but we definitely can make a lot of gains here. There are a lot of congressional seats that are toss-ups that we could win. And we absolutely, if we show up and we knock those doors, we can make a difference. So it might seem like it's Republican favored, but we definitely can make this very close in a way that we didn't think was possible earlier this year. And I want to look at the governors. Of course, obviously, we care a lot about the governor races. Here you see the Cook report. No shocker. We're looking at Kansas, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia as those toss-ups. Again, we are keeping a close eye on Maryland. Oregon has actually shifted, surprisingly, to be much more of a toss-up than we would have thought. So you can move that from the likely be to a completely toss-up. It is not going our way. But on the flip side, we are seeing, some that are like Kansas is looking much more likely Democrat. But this is all really going to come down to turnout, and I'll talk more about what we think is happening here. But it's basically a toss-up everywhere. And here you can sort of see the 538 map. I know it's a little hard to see, but the more less color there is, the more of a toss-up it is. The bluer, the redder, that's where they're sort of forecasting this. I will say with all of this, though, again, this is based on polls and fundraising and things that are not necessarily relevant to what is actually happening on the ground. What we have noticed that has given me a lot of hope is that people are very, very much for unions, very positive view of unions. We are seeing younger voters being very interested in this election, folks that normally wouldn't come out in a midterm. We are seeing some primaries that were forecasted to be highly Republican coming out as Democratic victories. So it is a unknown that we are going into. We certainly cannot look at this map and say, oh, we're probably going to win that. Let's sit back. But we also can't look at it and say, well, that might be Republican. Let's not play there. We want to play in all of the places we can try to get wins. So what are we doing? Most folks probably hopefully know this, but we are working very closely with the AFL-CIO. Randy has made this very clear that we are fully bought in to the AFL program. The AFL has identified 9 battleground states, and you can see those here. That's Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Some of them have just a US Senate or just a governor, but most of them have both a Senate and a governor. And these are also a lot of states where we have a huge amount of retirees. So these are the states we are really heavily invested in. Of course, as AFT, we know we have Florida, Oregon, and other states that we have a high amount of membership, and we are very invested in those, New Mexico, etc. But from the AFL perspective, these are the 9 big must-win states. If we want to keep the Senate, grow the Senate, if we want to get good governors, this is where we're looking at. So I wanted to give kind of a what we know or what we think we know. So typically, and I think everyone knows this, usually in a midterm, whatever party is in the president in the White House, we're going to typically lose seats. And that was what it looked like going into this year. However, when that Supreme Court decision happened with Dobbs, with abortion, we saw a significant shift. It's still within the margin of error, but we have seen that sort of general Democratic ballot go from, -2 to +4 in a lot of states. It's still within the margin of error, but it is very, very hopeful. So, and I know you probably are sick of us hearing this, telling you this, but this election, especially this midterm, it's going to come down to turnout. It will absolutely come down to turnout. There are very few persuadable voters. It is a very little amount that we can push one way or the other. The biggest thing we can do to win this election is to persuade those who normally do not show up in a midterm to show up and vote and make that plan to vote, check their voter registration, make sure they're registered to vote. That is huge. And with that, it really comes down to the issues. This is not unlike other elections, but especially this election, they're not necessarily sold on candidates one way or the other. But when you talk to them about the issues, when you talk to them about public education, inflation, democracy, our freedoms that are on the line, they start to see the importance of it. They start to see that clearly one candidate is better than the other and that they need to go out and vote. That is where we're going to make the difference. And one thing I want to highlight that I thought was really interesting that we've been seeing on the ground, especially in these 9 battleground states, is that these younger union members are the most likely to be undecided. They're not sure how they want to vote. Even if they lean Democratic, they're not sure what they're going to do. They're not sure if they're even going to go vote. That is who we really need to target. And we have seen from some different studies and things that the older generations talking to the younger generations is hugely impactful. So of course, you all talking to every member across the universe is very helpful. But hearing you all talking to those younger voters is actually really, really impactful and something that I really would love to try to really get you all into, because that makes a big difference. These younger voters are pretty much probably where we're going to win or lose this. So I wanted to give a very quick, and I know I'm going fast, and so I'm happy to take questions, but a quick view of what is AFT doing. So we do have our temporary political organizers called TPOs. They are out in 25 states. We've got about 139 of them right now. They are working with the affiliates and with the AFL-CIO. 2-week deployments, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but this is a huge part of this. We desperately need folks to be knocking on doors. That is the most impactful thing we can do. It is more impactful than calls or texts. It is those knocking the doors. And I'll talk more about that, but we really need to up everything that is happening around 2-week deployments. But as I mentioned, it's going to come down to voter registration, making a plan to vote, and pushing those people out to vote. So we've already done voter registration calls. We are doing follow-up texts. I know a lot of you have been calling different states around voter reg as well. That is hugely helpful. We have also already underway this week. We are doing ID calls just to try to sort of help some of those affiliates take people off their list. We know how they're going to vote. That's great. We don't need to persuade them. Let's put them to the side. So we are doing those to kind of help that. Mail and digital, huge investment here. So between AFT and the AFL, most states are going to get about 5 to 6 pieces of mail. It's very big. And the digital ads, a lot. We have digital ads already started. They will keep on going. They will get so many digital ads, whether that is Senate, governor, register to vote, congressional, make a plan to vote, volunteer. They will get a lot of digital ads. So if you're on Facebook and you start seeing those, that's what we're doing. Of course, we want to get more volunteers. One of the big things that the AFL-CIO has asked of everybody is to get 1% of their membership to volunteer. Everyone is behind, us included, but everyone is behind. So the more that we can get folks to phone bank or text on top of doing those 2-week deployments that I'll talk about, and we will have them all immobilized. We'll make sure everyone knows about them, but we will in the next coming weeks have a lot of volunteer opportunities for you all. Also, poll worker recruitment. A lot of what happens on election day, whose ballot is allowed, who has to go somewhere else, who has to stand in line. A lot of that is decided by volunteers that are just volunteering their time to work as poll workers. So we are partnering yet again with Power the Polls, which is a great organization that helps recruit poll workers. We have a specific AFT link that we can make sure all of you have. But if anyone is available to work on election day, or even throughout early voting in some states, that is hugely helpful. This is so critical. And again, no kind of shock here. Where they need those poll workers most critically are those 9 battleground states. And that is where we know that they are going to challenge elections. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, etc. We really need folks to do that. We will be, again, as I kind of mentioned, we'll have them up on Mobilize. We'll have some phone banks, some texting. There is no shortage of opportunities. I want to emphasize that. There's no shortage of opportunities. We will have everything, and we'll have them up on Mobilize so folks can easily sign up and get all the information you need. But again, I want to really emphasize this part of make a plan to vote. Our persuasion universe, again, is pretty small. It is not so much about persuading them to vote for the right candidate. It is persuading them to show up and vote. And the more that they make a plan to vote, that they are able, and this has shifted a lot, right? So laws and rules around when is that mail-in ballot, when you can request it, when you can get it, where you can drop it off, what is the early voting? A lot of things have changed in the last 2 years. So folks may not realize what they normally do may not be something they can do this year. It is really important to get everyone who's going to be supportive to figure out how are they going to vote. And we'll have all of this up on our website, aftvotes.org. We'll have a great tool where people can actually go in. They can indicate, they can check their voter registration. They can indicate how they're going to vote. If they're going to vote on election day, and it'll ask you what time. Are you going to vote at 9 a.m. or 7 p.m., whatever. And they can indicate that, and it'll give them reminders. It'll give them addresses, all of that. So hopefully it'll be a really great tool to push folks to. Also, of course, I think everyone is used to this. There will be a bus tour this year. We are still waiting on exact dates, but we do know it will kick off in Green Bay, Wisconsin on about the 18th. It'll go to the Twin Cities on the next day, and it will hit, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, all those key states. We will probably end-ish the bus tour that last weekend, November 5th. We'll probably be in about Philadelphia or Scranton. Still a little TBD, but as we know more, we'll make sure all of you are looped in, because I know that is so key. But kind of with that, and I know I talked to Joyce and Tom and other folks about this, these buses in Pennsylvania, huge key state, high stakes US Senate race, high stakes governor race. They also have a lot of congressional as well as state legislative races there. So we are looking very tentatively. I will keep working with folks to nail these down. Tom, I did talk with NYSET today, so I can get back to you on some stuff there. But we're looking at October 16th, maybe a bus into Scranton. October 22nd, possibly a bus into Philadelphia. And then we also want to look at a bus on November 5th, whether that's Philly or Scranton, kind of TBD, but we should have Randy with the bus tour there during that time. And of course, voter protection. So we are still collecting details about what this will look like, but we will certainly have like a 1-800 hotline and other things where if anyone has a problem regarding voting, they will be able to reach us and we'll be able to help. So I know I'm going really fast, but I wanted to really talk about this 2-week deployment. So we did actually have a meeting with Randy 2 days ago, and we really want to emphasize these 2-week deployments. The AFL, we are not where we need to be, is what I will say. As AFT, we are absolutely still the leader. We are doing great, but overall, we're not where we need to win. We are far behind where we normally are in past years, but we can do this. We can make it up. So these 2-week deployments, it is primarily canvassing, that door knocking. There's also phone banking opportunities. There's some worksite visit opportunities, but mostly it's that canvassing. That is the most effective thing that we can do to get people persuaded and out to vote, is to knock on their door. And we are focused on those 9 AFL-CIO battleground states. Currently, we have had, whether they're staff or, and I appreciate Joyce and Tom for sending us so many AFT retirees. We've had them deployed so far to Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, and Wisconsin. That does not cover all 9 states yet. So we do need to make sure that we hit Minnesota, Ohio, Georgia, etc. Not only do we have members that need to win those governor races in some of those states, we also know how important it is that if we win the US Senate, the difference that'll make in terms of federal legislation. It's a huge, huge difference. And we are looking at a very narrow margin that if you were to ask me to place a bet in Vegas right now, I'm going to tell you it's Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Georgia. That is where the Senate hinges. It is those states. And the more we can knock on those doors, the more we can do that. It is so important. And I will stop there. And I apologize if I went way too fast. But hopefully that is helpful. And I'm happy to take any questions or anything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam. I'm sure there are questions in the audience, but I had one of my own that I can pitch first. How, if anybody's interested in being a poll worker, is there a best way for them to make that known?
Yes. So we actually have a website that is AFT specific with Power the Polls, and I'll make sure you get that so you can send that around to folks. But it's literally like powerthepolls.org/AFT, but I'll make sure that you get that so you can send it around.
Got it. We will definitely get that out to everybody along with the rest of the materials here. And it looks like we have a question from Renee Potter. Renee, I just put you up to speak.
Hi, it's nice seeing you again, Calvin.
You too.
So, by Zoom. I'm curious what the bus means. I'm here in the Northwest. I'm in the Washington State, literally in Washington State. So I'm curious how that works. I mean, I just, need a little basic information.
Yeah, so with the bus, the bus is into Pennsylvania. We are primarily, so we're looking at a couple of different dates, like the 16th of October, the 22nd, November 5th. But those are primarily folks who are in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. But certainly if folks are from other states and they want to come in, we can figure that out and look at you, especially for like a 2-week deployment, a 1-week deployment. We are happy. Yeah, we are happy to be amenable. I mean, the long and short of it is we need people. We need all of you in these states very, very much. And so we will work it out. And of course, AFT will cover the travel. We have a per diem reimbursement, all of that. But you let us know you're interested. We will get you signed up.
Thanks.
Renee, it's Tom. I think you were referring, if I'm not mistaken, were you referring to the Randy bus tour, or were you referring to the buses of members into states like Pennsylvania?
I think that's what I was referring to the latter, Tom. Yeah. She answered my question.
Okay, fine.
Thanks. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Renee. I see a question in the chat from Joan and Don Radke. Any materials available to send out via mail? Is that for locals to send out to their members, I'm guessing. Or maybe Sam, you could just talk a little bit more about the mail pieces that you and the political department have lined up.
Yeah. So I also want to highlight, we do have a tool called Mosaic. It is, if folks are familiar with the AFL-CIO Working Families Toolkit, it's very much like that. And we can get you that information, Calvin, so you can send that around to everybody. We even have a recorded training video, but we will have on that, it's essentially the AFT version of the Working Families Toolkit, where we do have a lot of different flyers, commit cards, etc., digital ads, you name it, that are up there that folks can personalize. You can put your own AFT logo for your affiliate. You can change some of the language, etc. So we do have that. So I'll make sure that gets around to folks. And I know some states, like I know Pennsylvania is looking at like postcards. That does vary state by state with the AFL. In general, I can say like those 9 battleground states will be getting a lot of mail, like a lot of mail. So they'll get at least 3 pieces from the AFL-CIO. They'll get 3 to 4 from AFT. And of course, we work with the affiliates to get their approvals on all of that. And that's just for top of the ticket. So they'll also potentially be getting more mail pieces for congressionals and further down ballot, both from the AFL as well as AFT. So there will be a lot of mail, but I can try to make sure that we both, I'll make sure, Calvin, you get the info from Mosaic so you can send that around to everybody. And then as I know more from the AFL around like postcards or some of those other kind of efforts that are state-based, that we get that so folks can be plugged in there too.
Great. Our next question is from Ann Lipke. Can couples sign up to be deployed together?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are all about that. If you want to be part of it, 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you, if you want to go out together, absolutely, that is not a problem.
And again, if folks want to be deployed, Sam, how do they make that known?
So if they could email myself and Marcia Reed on our team, if you send the email to us, and I know Joyce and Tom have been doing this, just send us an email and we'll get you plugged in and we'll get back to you within a couple of days.
Great. And we can hopefully get Chris, who is our amazing support person, to put Samantha's email in the chat. And then if anybody also happens to email anyone on this call here on AFT staff, myself or Megan, we would definitely pass on that message as well. Next question I see is from Eliza. Hopefully that's how you pronounce that. Are we providing any sort of transportation for voters like Souls to the Polls?
Yes. I'm going to say a little TBD, but we are definitely partnering with all of those different organizations. We will absolutely be doing it. As I have more information, I will make sure folks know. But also, if you all hear anything from the ground, I know a lot of you are very connected to a lot of these organizations. If you hear first or you want to connect me, please feel free to do so.
Great. And I'm sure much of that will ramp up once in-person voting starts. I think it hasn't quite begun yet in any of the states, unless I'm wrong about that. The next question is from Dennis Cox. From whom will we be receiving a schedule of phone banking opportunities? When will such a schedule be sent out? We do have some AFTerburners phone banking opportunities, and those are on the Mobilize page. So strictly speaking, from the retirees team, I can put together a comprehensive schedule and send that out for our members as far as everything is scheduled right now. And then if you want the latest information, I'm going to say again, we would want to go to that go.aft.org/volunteer, and that will be updated every time we have new opportunities. Sam, from the political side, is there any kind of phone banking schedule?
Yeah, so we will have everything up on Mobilize. So it should all be the same Mobilize link, and we'll be continuously adding opportunities as we have them. But Mobilize is always going to be the best place to look.
Great. Thank you so much. And for anyone who's confused, because it does get confusing, Mobilize and go.aft.org/volunteer are the same place. Mobilize is the website that we use to do our signups for those phone banks. So those are the same thing. Okay, so I think that's all the questions we have right now, unless anyone else, unless there's anyone else that I've missed. Okay. And I am shooting a text message to our next speaker because, so for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm sure many of you already do, but I'm going to explain it just for the good of the group. When we talk about political, and thank you to Sam, who just, I think, jumped off the call. And she is around for questions if anybody has them as we wrap up the rest of this meeting. But so for anybody who doesn't know, there are two kind of legal sides to a campaign season, to election season. One of them is the coordinated campaign, which this kind of conversation falls under. And the legal restrictions on the coordinated campaign side of things are very low. And then you have the independent expenditure side, on which the legal restrictions are much higher, and anybody who is working on that side of things is not allowed to hear any kind of strategy discussion, any kind of field updates like Sam just went over in her presentation, or anything related to campaign strategy. So our next speaker is from our legislative department, and she is on the other side of the IE wall. So I just had to let her know that she is now okay to jump on the call. And I believe she's on. Here she is. So without further ado, and I think I stalled pretty well, we'll turn it over to Megan Stockhausen to give us a bit of a legislative update. Hi, Megan, welcome.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me. And I bet you stalled super well, Calvin. So I'm going to give an update, and usually I love to stick around for questions, and chat with you guys, because I know, as an activist, you're passionate and you're plugged in. I'm probably gonna jump right after my update, because just as Calvin alluded to, I'm walled off on our independent expenditure team, and I don't want to run afoul of any of those rules. So that's enough said on that. So in terms of the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, are folks familiar with those two Social Security provisions?
Megan, I think it's kind of complicated for people who are not in the states affected by it. So like California, New York, and so on. So you might just want to give a concise overview.
Okay, so I'll give a quick overview. That's such a good point, Tom. So there are 15 states in the country that are impacted by WEP and GPO, and they're formulas that reduce a person's Social Security benefits. The WEP reduces your Social Security benefits if you've spent some time working in jobs where you pay into the Social Security tax, and some time working in the public sector in a state where you don't pay Social Security taxes. And for the government pension office, that impacts the spousal benefits you get from Social Security, or the survivor benefits you get from Social Security. Both of these penalties were enacted in the late 70s, early 80s, and they really unfairly penalize public employees that are impacted. So over the last 30 plus years, there's been an effort to repeal both provisions. We also have efforts to reform both provisions. So this year, the effort, and they're typically bipartisan efforts. So this year, there was a lot of action and energy around a bill that would completely do away with both of these provisions. And the sponsors, a Republican from Illinois, Rodney Davis, and a Democrat from Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, they used every technical and procedural maneuver they could to try to force a full vote on this bill. What ended up happening is the bill went to markup in the Congressional Ways and Means Committee. Normally would be happy, because normally when your bill goes to markup, that's a sign that it's moving forward. In this case, with a limited number of days left in the calendar, that's actually kind of stalled the progress on WEP GPO, because we believe that we've moved off a track where a full vote would have been forced and back onto, like, we're kind of in a holding position where we have a Republican and a Democrat who are in very powerful committee positions. We believe they're working on a compromise bill that would be less than full reform. So we're monitoring this, we're watching this. It is an area where, like, this problem's been with us for many decades, but the grassroots activism and the outreach that folks have engaged in has really turned up the pressure and given more attention to a long-standing problem. So I'll turn it over to Calvin, who's worked incredibly closely on this issue, for those of you who are interested in getting more involved. I hope there are lots of kind of technical ins and outs about how this is playing out on the Hill, but I think the main takeaway is that, until the end of this year, we're going to keep following this, keep applying pressure, and encourage folks who are interested to get involved, and that it's not over yet. From a legislative kind of sausage making perspective, it's definitely not over yet, and we're tracking this closely. So with that, I'm gonna take my leave, and Calvin's been my partner in crime on WEP GPO the whole way through. So, any questions you have about the legislative ins and outs, or moving forward, please send them his way. And if he's not sharing an answer, Calvin and I will huddle and get an answer to your question. I'm gonna jump off the call now, but thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Megan. And Megan is a very humble person, but she has an incredible legislative mind on these kind of things and has been indispensable to this work. So thank you for all the work that you've done, Megan.
Thanks so much, Calvin. Bye, everybody.
Right.
And just to follow up on those updates from Megan, I think, we watched this House committee meeting very closely, and a lot of the discussion around it, a lot of the opposition to it was about the solvency of the Social Security system and funding, really. And so I think, a big part of our strategy going forward, and what Megan couldn't speak to because of her position on the IE side of things, is that we need more people in Congress who are going to support raising the cap, especially, with the Biden administration, targeting people over $400,000. So we need more allies in Congress to be able to move this forward. And that's a big part of what we're going to be focusing on. There's also a big understanding gap when we look at our members, in-service members. Before people retire, many people often don't hear about this or are not fully informed on it. And when they find out about it, they're rightfully outraged. So in October, we're going to be hosting some informational sessions through the AFT. And so, we will probably be in touch with everybody on this call, all of our leaders, to get the word out about that to retirees and in-service members, so that we can, continue to coordinate a strategy on that. So I see a couple of hands, and I see a question in the chat. Do we know exactly who to in Congress to contact? We had been focusing on House leadership and on the Ways and Means Committee, and that's a question from Renee. Thank you, Renee. And right now we're kind of stalled on that, just because due to the action that was taken in the Ways and Means Committee, where they passed it through committee without a recommendation to the House floor, meaning we probably won't see a vote on it until at least the lame duck session. So right now on that particular bill, we're kind of in a holding pattern. But I see Dennis with a hand up. Dennis, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, I wanted to encourage the AFT to continue to work with this cost issue. When you listen to the hearings, despite all the platitudes about how everybody supports the beneficiaries of Social Security and how unfortunate it is that they're being denied their money, the issue always goes back to the cost of making a full repeal. And we're not interested just in reforming the formula so that it doesn't hurt as much. We want to take it out completely. So I would encourage the AFT to get information out to people in Congress, as well as those that are working on this issue, about the specifics of this cost argument. Raising the cap would solve the solvency problem, and we understand why the Republican representatives don't want to do that, because they're getting donations from people that want their money protected, because despite their enormous wealth, they still want to hang on to their money. So I would encourage the AFT to also provide specific rebuttals to this argument that it'll cost too much money and that it will render the insolvency problem even more serious than it is right now. I think taking this argument on full blast, I don't have hopes that they would raise the cap enormously, or if at all, but at least we need to address the argument in specific terms. This is a bogus argument about insolvency, that there are ways of protecting the solvency of the Social Security Fund simply by raising the cap. Yesterday I was on a meeting with a webinar with Katie Porter, who said the same thing. Basically, there are ways that we can provide the funding that's necessary. So it's a bogus argument, and I'd like to see the AFT address it in more specific terms, and both to Congress and to those of us who are engaged in the struggle, that this is a bogus argument and here's why, and give some specifics on the way in which funding can be provided for Social Security, and put to rest this argument about insolvency. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dennis, for your comments. Astute as always, and I know there are many members affected in California, so thank you.
So with that, we're gonna get ready here for Nina of our AFTerburners team. Nina, do you want to take us away with our last piece of the agenda today?
Thanks, Megan. Thank you, Calvin. I am an AFTerburner. I'm one of 5 team leads, and what we do, after you've heard everything from Megan Stockhouse about the WEP and the GPO, or we heard from Samantha with voter registration. This past week was voter registration week, and technically what we do is assist you. And what I mean by you, we come from all over. I started AFTerburners by making calls to a person that, Renee, trying to get people to her meeting. That was something that we heard that you needed, and that's what the AFT was there for. And the AFT is there for all of us. And I'm wearing a shirt that says make a difference, because we are making a difference. Every time you pick up that phone and make a phone call, as Tom had mentioned, in New York, we did not have the WEP GPO situation, and I was enlightened. And when we were speaking to members in their states that did not know that they had it, it was eye-opening for them to call to make a difference, to do something about it. I'm currently involved with making a difference in our battleground states, because before you can vote, you need to check if you're registered. only because of the fact that you might have been purged from your registration status in your current state. Or remember Texas, they moved where you can put your absentee ballots in. We were alerting them in that state. We've called into Florida. We've called everywhere that we possibly could, of where we would notify from members across the state that there are issues, whether it's an issue within your local union that you would like to have rectified. It wouldn't have come to our attention unless it came from AFT members, and we appreciate it. I hustle. I don't mean I have a side job. I mean that I hustle as texting. And lately that was with the AFT with the loan forgiveness. We're notifying members across the nation of what's available to them. To do something that you've heard that you want to do, please get involved. It's one thing being on a webinar and listening to everything. Now the next step is up to you. Are you going to go on the Mobilize website? Because ironically today, on alternated Thursdays from 4 to 4:45, there's phone calls today with Mobilize, because I signed up for that. With reference to a bus, find out within your local or call the AFT, avail yourself to the website. Please volunteer, because without us, they wouldn't know, and there needs to be more of us to do something. And there's no I in team, and teamwork makes the dream work. So we can do this. And this is a very important election year, even though they don't consider the midterms, but you know what we're up against, and we know what we need to do. So register, vote, educate, do whatever we need to do to get it done. And that's why I'm involved. And we would love to have you on a call. Calvin and Megan, they can tell you what has been done and the work that still needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina.
Any questions?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We are at 2:01, so I know we try to keep things on time, the trains on time here. But certainly if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Please also feel free and empowered to reach out to us at AFT Retirees at AFT.org with any questions. That's the catch-all email account for our program. I see a question up, Walter.
Yeah, Megan, just if you can, on AFTerburners, is there information or link directly so people could volunteer specifically for AFTerburners?
I believe on the Mobilize, it gives you the option to choose AFTerburners as the team you're going to be phone banking with. So it's right in there. Retirees get very much respect in this process because you're already a team. So you just plug into your team, and then from there, the phone banks are all set.
And once a month, we have a monthly team meeting. Calvin sends that out, and we try to recruit as many AFTerburners as we can. And these telephone calls are essential. It keeps the union together. And I neglected to say that it started right around COVID. So there's always wellness calls to make. And when you start out making a call, you kind of personalize it. You're asking how this member is before you inform them of what you're calling about to get them familiar with their union, the AFT. And it's very personable. And I really found that we're there to help them, and they understand our concerns, and they are thankful that we've notified them for whatever issue we were talking about.
Yeah, that it helps to have a retiree talking to another retiree versus a staffer calling, or someone who maybe has no idea, right? Even if you're calling from different states. So that's definitely a benefit of that program, that piece of this program. Do we have any other questions? I don't see anything in the chat. Some excitement about door knocking and hustle. So I'm excited about y'all being excited about that, but I don't see any other questions here. Tom, did you want to give closing remarks?
Here we go, yes. Well, when we do a whole bunch of things, including the web GPO stuff, we have to understand that we're asking folks who are not affected by this to help those who are affected. It's a solidarity type thing. It's a seamless type thing that we help each other out. I mean, there are all sorts of arguments out there. Why didn't you guys force your state to do it sooner? Like we had our state do it in the 1950s. There's a remnant of resentment for some folks like that. And also the cost issue is, a reason for not doing it. It's not the best reason for that, because there are fixes to Social Security that have to be made. But that's on the legislative aspect of it. On the political aspect of it, we started out by talking about the fate that this country is in. And, there are people who make comparisons to earlier presidents and talk about how LBJ did these wonderful things, and he did, and FDR did these wonderful things, but they did them with great majorities, and even though they did, they still were constrained by conservatives within their own party. Here we have an administration that is able to navigate. President Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are able to navigate through with the barest of majorities and through their own party that is multifaceted. And we have to help make sure that that continues to happen. Just imagine what's going to happen to a woman's right to choose if we don't have a good Congress. Because right now, and also look at the Supreme Court decision on the environment, where they gutted the administration's ability to do something about the environment. But the Inflation Reduction Act included a piece of legislation that fixed that legislatively. Now, the Democrats would fix the choice issue if they can get the majorities to do it. I mean, and there are a whole host of other things, education and labor issues that are so dependent on that. And not only that, just ask yourself, what kind of a country do you personally want to live in? So we act to make sure that we want this country to be something reflecting our values. That's what we're all about. And it's crunch time, I guess, for election. And even if we're behind, we could still do some things. We have to be optimistic, and we have to believe we can do it. That's what we're doing. So thank you, everybody, and let's hit the road.